the first thing I'd like to ask you is, how do you feel when you look at that picture? Happy?
Yeah.
Excited? For me, I just feel fear. I was once airlifted off a slope, very similar to that, after wiping out an entire party of German school children. So we all have a perception around different activities and aspects of life that is, in my view, formed from an emotional perspective. And that's kind of what I'm going to be talking to you. And I've been listening to all the presentations tonight, and underneath it all, hopefully I can sort of weave these emotions to show you they're not an add-on, to show you they're not something that we just have to control and manage. And I'm really aware of that, working in what is quite a masculine sporting environment, and also through my work and working with lots of different elite environments. So how does your identity as an athlete form? Well, I'd like to ask you a question. Can you think about a sporting memory that is negative? Someone earlier couldn't come up with anyone, could you, Ed? But, you know, I think that was just boasting. And then I want you to think about a sporting memory that's positive. So from those memories, we form an identity with our sport, with our performance. Now, what I'm proposing is that consciousness has an emotional, pre-reflective element, and that the idea of where we come from has an emotional gatekeeper, and we have that emotional gatekeeper with everything that we access. So with those sporting memories that you have, you've created an emotional gatekeeper, and that has a huge impact on all of our behaviour. The reason that has an impact is because when we come across things, different things that we see, such as perhaps even that picture of an injury for some of you has caused some kind of emotional reaction for you. Has anyone here had an injury sustained? So it maybe sort of stirs up some emotional feelings for you. Retirement, so part of my role is helping transitioning athletes, so athletes that are leaving a sport. That has a huge emotional capacity towards it. And then losing. I'm sure everybody in the room has had to lose at some point. So there's an emotional, and I'm proposing pre-reflective capacity to that. The reason that I'm saying it's pre-reflective, and this is back, the theories that I'm using for this are embodied cognition and neuroscience, so people like Damasio and Narvaez. And therefore, the idea that when we have an actual physical, emotional reaction, it's 90 seconds is all that reaction time is. It's just 90 seconds. But if I asked you the last time you got angry, for instance, you'd probably say that it lasted a lot longer. Well, the reason that it lasts longer is because our imagination kicks in. And it's our imagination and our perception of an event and the way that we know the feeling that has a huge impact on our behaviour. And when we repeat that over time, then we form a neural pathway, and that becomes a part of our character and a trait, and then that becomes part of our identity. And this has a huge underlying influence on lots of the things that have been discussed today. And in Paul's comment, you were saying about the sleep, and actually it's the way it's perceived by athletes that matters. And you were talking about the way of people, the why, that people have to be aware of their training and why they're doing it. Well, that's their perception of it. And each of us in this room have a completely different perception that's based on our values, based on our prior experiences, and underlying that are emotions, the gatekeeper that's behind that. So let's imagine that you get a player gets a little bit of a bad experience at an away venue. Okay? Now, I work with players who are in the academy at Fulham, and they can have a terrible experience at an away venue. And then that becomes their perception of going to that venue. So every time they go there, they're going to have a pre-reflective emotional response towards that. And what can you do to try and change that? Well, you can't outthink it. And then this makes me slightly unpopular with the sports psychologists. But the views that I'm proposing is that it's not about managing it and controlling it. It's actually about transforming it. It's about transforming the emotional gatekeeper that's behind it. And the research that I've done as part of my PhD has been looking at, well, how do we transform that? What is emotionally informed learning? Well, it is about that transformation. So all we need is the possibility of other. So in all the research that I've done, we just need to consider a possible other alternative outcome. And we do that through metacognition and meta-emotion. I'm getting moved back here. Through metacognition and meta-emotion. So the idea of being aware of what we're thinking and aware of what we're feeling. And that goes back to the why that we started off with this, and also to this idea of this self-efficacy that's underlying at Fulham as well. The most important thing would be for an athlete to understand themselves. I know as a teacher, and you know as a coach, that you can't do everything for someone. They have to actually be able to do it for themselves, and they really have to do it for themselves in terms of transformation. The reason and the rationale behind that why we would transform is because we are, according to these embodied cognitionists and neuroscientists, we are always seeking homeostasis. And this is a slightly false picture, but it's very difficult to get an image that represents it well. Homeostasis is just that sweet spot. It's our optimal performance. And that's what entire existence is based on seeking. It's based on seeking homeostasis. So if a player knows that they're going to this away venue and they feel uncomfortable, that their homeostasis is out, then they are going to want to seek transformation. It's the only way we kind of embrace change, because change is scary, even if where we are is in a difficult place. So the actual transformation that we have to make as coaches and facilitators around people, we have to give control of the transformation to the player, to the athlete. They have to decide what they want to be, but we have to allow them to do that. So we need to not use labels and make assumptions when we're working with someone. So never saying, you're a player who does this, you're an athlete who does that. We need to allow for the possibility that they're not. And we need to really change our language around working with players and athletes to allow that to happen. We have to give loving support. In all the research that I've done, love comes through every time, from coaches, from teachers, from players. They talk about that you have to give this support, because someone, to allow themselves to transform, they have to make themselves vulnerable. And so they have to have someone around them who will support them through that. We have to allow them to have control over what B looks like. So if they're transforming from A to B, they need to make the choice of what B is. Perhaps through looking at who they are now and who they want to be. That's an activity I do with players all the time. So this comes back to something really important when you were talking about the way that players are improving their movement skills. So the way to really embrace transformation is play. So this is somebody called Panksepp, and he's like a professor of play. He found out that rats giggle and like to play, and that's when he understood about play. So through play is actually not just about movement, it's about testing our emotional capacity. When we're little and when we're young, that's what we do. We take ourselves to our emotional edge through play, through games, through things that we do. So siblings, who here's got a sibling that they used to fight with? That's where you understand where that edge is. So when those kids are playing and moving, they're actually also stretching their fear. They're stretching that capacity. And that's really important. So part of the work that I'm able to do at Fulham is to talk to the players and find out where their fear is. Are they feared? They've got a fear because they've just been injured. I'm working with someone at the moment who's coming back from a really serious injury. And it's sitting down with him, finding out what he's afraid of, and then feeding that to the coaches so that they can actually put things into the training sessions to help him face that fear and lean into that fear. But through play and through him having control over that process so that he can rewire himself literally from the inside. Because what has to happen in that transformation is we have to create a new neural pathway. And through doing that new neural pathway, we diminish the old one, and the new behaviour comes in. Oops. There we go. I think I'm ahead of time. Okay. Thank you very much.